So candidate number two, the same thing. The question before we're going to start for you, like, can you tell what kind of position you are looking for?
Sure, I'm looking for a position as an SDET. So I've been working in QA for the last 3 or so years, and I'd like to get a little bit more into focusing on the technical aspect and coding.
Awesome, perfect. All right, let's get started then. So candidate number two, please tell us about yourself and about your last projects.
Sure. So like I said, I've been working for about three plus years, mostly as a QA engineer, and I focused on mobile automation at the beginning, and I've also worked on APIs now as well, and some Selenium as well. And I have a diverse background. I have a background in computer science, and then I did a master's in anthropology, kind of a little bit more, people, soft skills, I think I would say I would develop during that degree, and spent a lot of time taking teaching workshops, various, leadership workshops. So I think that these translate well into the workplace in terms of, either mentorship, which I've done a little bit of, with interns in the past, and these kind of soft skills that translate to the workplace. And my last project has been an API testing framework for a REST and GraphQL backend. Well, API. And yeah, developing the, getting it running on all the environments and the pipelines, and getting it test triggers from different repositories that it depends on. So having the code trigger that. Yeah, that's let's say that's wraps it up, sums it up.
Awesome. Mike, Adeel, please go ahead.
Adeel, do you want to go ahead? I'm still reading the resume. Sorry.
Sure. Yeah, I can go first. So one thing, and thank you for sharing that, the intro, the information. One thing, you were talking about your last project, talked about API, REST, GraphQL. Can you talk a little bit more about your framework, the language and the tech stack that you use to test that?
Sure. I work primarily in JavaScript. So it's a JavaScript-based framework using Cucumber.js for the test language. Let's say the Gherkin scenarios. Mm-hmm. And then mostly using chai assertions for to assert the results are correct. Yeah, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, can you so you covered both things, so I'm a little unclear. Maybe you can clarify for me the API test framework part of it. You said you wrote the API tests were written in Gherkin syntax.
So the Gherkin syntax for the test definition, right? So and then
yeah, I mean I'm just picking up on what you shared. Were you using Gherkin syntax, Cucumber? Were you using those things for just the front end?
So it's an API test framework primarily. So underlying that, it does calls to REST or GraphQL endpoints, depending, because we have a layered architecture, and so we need to use the GraphQL for certain different things, such as
okay.
It actually
Okay, so you talked about a little bit about the language you used, right? Maybe tell me a little bit more about what was like, how did you how are these tests execute it? And how do you go over the results of this test? Like, is this something running locally? Is this something you're running in your CI/CD?
Right. So for we do run them in we're using GitHub. We use in the GitHub Actions. And we also have those triggered by other repositories. So there's a command to have one repository trigger the test pipeline at the end of the release, or once it's released to an environment. So we'll trigger the test on different environments. I think I may have forgot the first part of your question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so that is great. So they get kicked up in GitHub Actions. There's a hook that gets triggered. Once that test run, like, does that block your release from moving forward? If a test fails, who reviews the test results?
Yeah.
Where are the test results published?
So we're using the Cucumber's own result publication. It'll spin up a web page per run. So we're able to share that between the team. So if there's an issue during the release, either myself or we've hired another QA engineer since, we'll look at those and see whether it was an issue with the test or with the environment setup, and we'll make decisions accordingly. So if we have the issues on the QA environment or staging environment, we'll evaluate that and either delay further release to production or whatever, depending on what the issue is, of course. It may be some quick fix with the environment.
Okay, cool. So without going too deep into it, you mentioned that you're looking for software development engineering test SDET roles. How do you? But you're doing a fair amount of, just from at a high level, you're doing a fair amount of automation right now. How do you think your role differs right now from an SDET?
Yeah.
And maybe even highlight what things are you maybe more specifically looking for in your next role that that you don't see being addressed right now.
So in previous roles as well, I've kind of seen like my attention kind of being split between doing the test automation and doing manual testing, which sometimes in some roles can be pretty repetitive, depending on how well, once I stepped into the role, how well the automation was already done. And I find that some of those tasks can be taken on quite easily by juniors, which I'm happy to mentor as well. So sometimes I feel I would like to, push further in my automation skills and do a little bit more, learn more on the DevOps side as well. But sometimes my time is split between this, and right now I'm also doing some release management work, which is great because it's another opportunity to learn, some other skills. But I'd like to develop my hard skills a little further and push a little more into working with Docker, Kubernetes, and like streamlining the automation process. Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm just repeating just so I understood correctly. You're looking for more. You're looking to be on a team that fosters more of those programming, those DevOps, those pipeline skills, and you want a position where you're more focused on those things, but you are happy to mentor others to do some of the manual testing parts.
Yes, exactly.
All right, sounds good. Cool, awesome, thank you. Mike, you had any questions?
Yeah. Hi, candidate number 2. How are you?
Hello.
Hi. So I'm reading on the side panel there. You have list out different technical skills. You have languages and so on and so forth. So I read the first line that says Java, and you put down proficient, which is great. We can always use more of that. But I think, and I could be wrong, but I think I only see, at least from your resume, relevant experience about Java in the 2010 teaching assistant. Is that right? Or have you used Java in other contexts?
Right. So yeah, maybe it would be good to change the ordering of those. But so yeah, I did, you know, my primary language during my bachelor's education was Java. And then for the teaching assistant work, it was Java. In my work, I've been using JavaScript. It just happened that the first position that I was hired for, the entire team was using JavaScript. So I ended up, improving my skills there. I had just been learning a little bit JavaScript on my own before then, and I had been using primarily JavaScript since then. So I would say that JavaScript is probably the stronger one. But I have also encountered, other Java frameworks, test frameworks during my career, like in my previous role. Other teams were using Java. So I, was exposed to that. And at some point I inherited also another Java framework that I had to work on, but it was more occasional than the JavaScript, which I've spent a lot of time with WebDriver IO, setting up test frameworks and so on, and upgrading versions of that. So I would say a little more stronger with JavaScript and Node than Java right now, but I think I could easily, if I were to be hired on a team where Java is the main language, I think I could transition back into that as well.
Okay. And for API testing, did you use any specific JavaScript packages to do that? Any npm package, or did you just use HTTP? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think there's a package, I think it's called request, or not request, but
that's from Nodes, right? From Nodes.
Yeah, Node.js. I'm sorry. Did I hear correctly? Did you say Node?
Yeah, no, I mean the request library from the Node.js framework, right? Okay, all right. I'm just curious as to if you're using anything specific, Accion. So there are all kinds of different packages out there, but I just a little bit curious about that. Okay, that's fine. So walk me through. You don't have to go into a lot of details. I just want to. I'm more interested in the process, right? Walk me through from start of the sprint and until like the closing of a sprint, assuming you're using Scrum or the alike. What kind of activities, like the high level activities, do you kind of participate in throughout this entire one sprint cycle like that? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So at the beginning of the sprint, on my current team, the product manager will have some specifications or the requests coming in for features, and the team will discuss that together, and we will evaluate points assignment. And after this, in a separate meeting, I will work with the other QA engineer to decide how we're going to test each feature, whether each feature requires automation. In some cases, we have certain parts of the product that don't work well with automation, so we will not do that. But for all the API calls, we will have plan for test cases, and after that, I will create tests depending on what's assigned to me. I will create the test scenarios, positive and negative test cases, and write the code for the testing that, and create PRs. I will also review my coworkers PRs for tests, and towards the end of the sprint, I will also manage what is able to be released and make a plan for the release testing. Anything that is not automated will be tested manually during the release, and also any automated tests that are ready. Usually for all the API endpoints, we aim to have them ready by the end of the sprint. We will also run those during the release. And yeah, that's basically it. That's the sprint cycle.
Okay. So then I will assume that you or your teammates would be the one creating all the Gherkin specs, right? All the Gherkin files. And in this context of BDD, can you explain to me how the BDD style or approach is helping you or your team in terms of quality? Like why choose to using that structure rather than something else?
Yeah, I like the the Gherkin syntax and the BDD approach. I would like to have it a little bit more within in the definition stage of the features, because I think it makes it easier to actually see. It kind of forces that the definition be a little bit more precise.
Okay.
So I find that writing the test scenarios helps me to define exactly what the scenario is.
Are you saying, I'm sorry, are you saying you would like the Gherkin language to be actually in the story itself, like that? Or
yeah,
something?
So it hasn't in my team. It's a little bit I think that the product manager is not so much into the Gherkin, but I would like to move it a little bit more, as they say, shift left. I would like to move it a little bit more back, but we're almost BDD. We're like a modified BDD, I would say. So I discuss it more with the other QA engineer, but not the entire team. I think if I would have gone back, maybe I would have made more of an effort to integrate the testing framework within the test, within the like API code framework itself, to have developers be a little bit more engaged with those scenarios as well, but maybe in the next project.
Okay. And when you are reviewing PRs, can you walk me through just some of the thinking process, or maybe even if you have a written down list of criteria, like what are you looking for looking at a PR? What says it's a good PR or it's a bad one?
Sure. Kind of off the top of my head, first of all, that the scenarios intended to be covered are indeed covered, and then the code itself is as dry as possible in terms of not repetitive, and anything that can be extracted into a helper function is done as so, and that it's well structured. Variable names should be clear. I don't know, what else, but
well, I know, just whatever makes sense to, whatever is important to you is what I'm asking. I'm not looking for like a universal standard, right? Just when you're looking at this, what are you looking at, right? And what you mentioned was good. You're looking at requirements and making sure that there's no code bloat, or you want to create refactored, right? Helper function. Those are all good. But anything else that will make sense? What about some of the no-nos? Something that comes up and goes as an immediate reject, right? Anything like that?
I I can't think of anything really serious because you know, my coworker that I'm working with is competent, so I can't think of anything serious. But I do reject spelling errors and typos because I find that whenever these are present, it will cause a lot of trouble in the future when, you know, let's say the function name is misspelled, you know. It will cause some confusion during that process.
Plus, it's a bad look for QA, just in general. Okay. What about data? I know Gherkin's, most of the BDD facility allow you to kind of, you know, specify multiple sets of data if you choose to do that, right? Do you look at that at all? And what are some of the considerations you will make regarding test data?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I can't really think of many scenarios where I needed a lot of data. So sorry, the question is what considerations?
Right. What are you thinking about when you look at someone's, you know, script and go, okay, you're using that data set, this kind of data, that kind of number, and then are you thinking through, hey, maybe you should look at this other data, or don't use this one, you know, like that.
So in terms of examples, like what, you know, so like, for example, if I have an example table, what kind of data would I use? Right, so yeah, what I try to look for is, in terms of looking at the scenario from a higher level, just think of what would be the main factors that would cause the result to change significantly. So, you know, looking at edge cases, looking at, you know, zero would be an obvious number or a negative number in terms of edge cases. And then, in the positive cases, we never want to have, like, you know, we can't test all the numbers, for example, but we try to test a few that are in the upper range of what would be normal or acceptable, and what would be, and maybe, you know, one that's outside of that upper range, if one exists, right? To see how the system handles that, make sure it handles it gracefully, and then, you know, a normal expected value, like something in the middle. Hopefully that's clear enough.
Very nice. I have one more question. Are you okay? Just let me ask one more question here.
Oh yeah, please.
And you know, most of my questions are very kind of like experiential or experience related. So really not a right and wrong, but it does, well, hopefully it provokes you to think, and it also provokes us to think, you know, whether that speaks to your experience or not, right? Okay. So you have, let me see, maybe 6 to 8 years experience as a test engineer, okay, in different capacity. I could be a little off on that number, but something like that. Strictly from the standpoint of coding, what you need to code for testing, right? So test automation per se. From that perspective, what do you think are generally the most lacking skills, or most the area that needs the most improvements, right? Like you yourself or your co-worker or your teammates that are writing test automation code and what have you. And if you look kind of broadly across all of them and over the years and over the different projects, can you point to like one or few things that says, yeah, we really need to improve on this thing, we need to do a better job at that thing, that sort of stuff?
I would say generally, did you say strictly from the perspective of coding?
Well, yeah, I'm looking at, I'm trying to drive at something, but yeah, so strictly on coding. Obviously, we can improve on everything, so I'm not gonna make that too broad because we can get we can get done with this meeting. But just say let's say on coding itself, when everything is checked in, and look at the code, and what would you see that you say this is lacking, we can improve on this, like that. Right?
I mean, sorry, I can't think of anything, but I think,
Okay.
I mean, I was thinking outside of that perspective, I see like things that I would like to improve are just generally having a smoother CI/CD process, which I find a lot of teams are not fully there.
Okay, no, that's good. That's good. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Adele.
No, I think I don't have any follow-up questions. You can move to feedback if you're ready, Evgeny.
Yeah, let's go with the feedback. Adeel, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I can go first. So definitely I felt really good experience. I think one thing, don't mean to offend you or anybody else if I'm using the wrong word, but some of your introduction was good, but you had me feeling like you weren't doing test automation before. And there's a couple of things that tie into that as well. So I'll talk about that. So number one, I would say, instead of framing it as you want to get into an SDET role, and from a mindset perspective, and you're talking about it in your resume, reflect it as a sort of a natural sort of progression. You're already doing a fair amount of those things based on the questions me and Mike asked today. Part of that also ties into, I think, just on your resume, if you look at it, your most recent work experience has 3 bullet points, and you look at reading club organizer and discussion lead also has 3 bullet points. So you want to find that balance there. You want to probably explain your more recent experience even more. Some of the things that you have in technical skills may be better translated to, you may want to translate on your work experience as well. As an example, I think you spoke about GitHub Actions. Really cool. We didn't get into too much of, did you configure those GitHub Action jobs yourself or not? But those are kind of things that I would love to see you highlight in your more recent experience. And in order to get that real state, maybe you want to remove or shorten some of your other experience, but find the right balance. Look at it as a whole, find the right balance, but definitely find a way to highlight those things some more. Also, I think maybe work on your transition or your end of this ending of your answers to questions. I think a lot of times you left them like open-ended or unsure, and that's okay. We feel the same way when we're answering questions. Just maybe instead of saying, maybe leaving it, what's the right word? Open-ended. Maybe finish it with, hey Mike, did I answer the question? Am I going the right direction? Maybe end it that way. That's gonna give a prompt to the interviewer to share more information, as opposed to not being sure if the question has been answered by you or not.
Great, I appreciate that. I actually do feel kind of like I'm not sure if I answered the question fully, and that's a really helpful tip for me to end with. Because my brain is still working, and I need to figure out when to decide to stop the sentence. Otherwise, it trails off. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I think most people feel that way. I know I feel that way as well, whether I'm interviewing or being interviewed. Also checking in, that's also a great way to show engagement, by checking in. Sometimes I don't think you were, but in general, sometimes people can ramble about a topic, and the interviewer is ready to move on, but they don't want to be rude and cut you off. So it's a good way to take a pause as well to confirm, like, hey, should I continue with my explanation, or did I answer your question, or did I understand it correctly? Those are all good things. I think we talked about this as already, just updating your, maybe dropping the proficiency as a whole, or updating them in a way that's it's more helpful to you. You don't, you know, you don't want to get into that situation where you may not be ready to talk about Java, or you may want to communicate that JavaScript is your strongest suit. Maybe either you leave it to the conversation or find a better way to communicate that. And also tie that into your work experience. Because when I was looking at your latest work experience, I wasn't sure if you were using JavaScript or not. Because if you look at REST, GraphQL, Appium, Selenium, they're applicable to Java, Python, other languages as well.
Right. So you would include more detail in the work experience, and you said even remove the technical skills section, or
no,
maybe...
I wouldn't remove it, but look at it this way: if you think there's something valuable in that experience, like for example, GitHub Actions, maybe you want to add a bullet point to your latest experience about how you utilize GitHub Actions.
All right.
Is what I meant.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. I did feel some of your explanation about the tech stack and your framework were a little lacking. So just some coaching on that, just rehearse in your mind, or use a friend or a coworker who you're comfortable sharing that information, and just rehearse talking about the solutions you've implemented, the frameworks you are working with. That would be helpful, I think. I really liked your comment around shift left. We love those kind of, we love those buzzwords, but you also backed it up with a real example, and we love that even more. So definitely more of that. And then just the final one is, this isn't a right or a wrong. You already have great experience. Nobody's gonna reject your resume based on this, but just a little tip. And I forget what the font you're using, I forget what they're called, but like these Times New Roman kind of fonts, they look great for like a heading or something, but you maybe want to switch to Arial or something a little bit more cleaner looking font.
So a sans serif, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
For not all of it, but like for the bullet points.
Okay.
And that's a very subjective thing. So if you have a designer friend, consult them. But I think it just those pointy kind of fonts, they don't look as clean. But believe me, nobody's gonna reject your resume based on that. And this is for everybody as well. In general, on the engineering side of things, we are very, whether it's recruiters or hiring managers, we are very, very forgiving on any sort of resume mistakes. But just a little tip there.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Cool. Mike?
Yeah, all great points. Regarding the font stuff, and Adeel is right. When resume comes to my like inbox, I'm less concerned about stylistic types of things, and I'm catching keywords, right? So if you want to highlight those keywords, you have to highlight those keywords. If I can't find it, if I don't see it clearly, big block with the Skittles on the side, if I can see it, I just don't think you have it, right? So I see GitHub Action now all the way to the left on that little column, but it's not in your experience there per se, right? So one of two things might happen. I mean, it depends on manager, so this is not universal, but sometimes people do pad resume to make it look like you have a more complete alphabet soup, right? I might classify you as like, oh yeah, she just put buzzword, so yeah, forget it, right? So I might take that kind of assumption, which is not what you want. Or yeah, someone has an experience with GitHub Action, but only because they went to some online training, or they work with a friend, with a coworker, so they don't have actually hands-on experience, so very light, right? So definitely you want to, if GitHub Action is something that you want to highlight that, make it big, make a whole sentence about that, what do you do and stuff like that. and just use up space to really show what you have done, if that's important. So that is to say that perhaps depending on the job that you're applying, you might need to kind of work on your resume a little bit, right? Slightly highlight different things depending on the role, right? But one more thing about the style thing, it doesn't affect us so much, but it may affect the front end HR or the recruiter people, right? So you definitely want to kind of think from their perspective, what makes sense to them. If it looks, and I don't know actually their criteria, but if it looks sort of like, you know, whatever the not good enough might mean, then they might not even send this resume to us, right? So you kind of want to pass them as well. So think from that perspective a little bit if you can. Generally, a clean resume is a good resume, right? Easy to read, easy to find stuff. That's what you want. And a lot of recruiters, they will take your resume and they would bold certain words for us, right? I get that a lot. Right? They highlight, they change color on certain keywords like that. So definitely, if they would highlight like GitHub Action, it should not just be highlighting the GitHub Action words on the left, you know, panel, the blue panel there, right? It should be somewhere in the experience, and that will look really good like that. Okay. I want to talk a little bit more about that left panel now, the technical skills, and this is a situation possibly may not happen, but if it does happen, you know, I hope you would take this into consideration, right? Supposing that this resume comes to someone who is very technical, some, you know, QA manager could be very technical, or someone, you know, perhaps like someone like me that played multiple roles and wear multiple hats. Sometimes I'm on the architecture side, sometimes I'm doing DevOps, sometimes I'm doing automation. I'm going back and forth. And when I see this sort of technical skills and I'm reading them, right? If I see the word proficient, I'm gonna just like, okay, proficient, right? I will actually test you on that. If you're not ready, just don't say proficient, or just don't say it at all. It's okay, right? Let it fall where it may during the interview. And so maybe the question never comes up about Python, perhaps, right? But if you're gonna put proficient, you need to back it up. And so depends on your own comfort level. If you feel like I am really proficient, go ahead and put it in there, because then you're inviting that kind of questions. Which is, you know, again, if you want that, you probably have it. Second thing is that list, the individual items are good, but perhaps the heading might need a little bit of rework. For example, Xcode and Android Studio, I would put that all the way down to that tools of the trade, or maybe just say tools, right? Because VS Code is in there, and so why is Xcode up there? Right? Things like that, right? So someone who is very technical and kind of fastidious about this sort of things, that stands out to them as like what's going on, right? Like, you know, how would you use Xcode for test automation and not using it as a tool for like just developing code, right? So maybe you want to kind of rework that a little bit, or maybe make your listing category more generic, right? For example, the JS library, maybe, I don't know how much of that will come up in the interview, but perhaps just as a suggestion, maybe you can say something like WebDriver IO with Chai, right, or with Mocha, and then that's good enough. Just right there is all you have to say about what you're doing on the JavaScript side. So something about that, just kind of rearranging that a little bit. Definitely for SDET, you want to highlight the test automation side of things, but like you were talking about the GitHub Action, right? To me, the more progressive kind of SDET positions, or you know, the teams, right? The kind of the latest and greatest bleeding edge stuff is what they're looking for, and they're also looking for the tried and true automation stuff like shell script, right? Which you have it in there. Again, I can't quite find out on the experience, but when it comes to CI/CD, it's either like the really leading edge, like Jenkins and, you know, GitHub and that sort of thing, or it's shell scripted. And so if you have both, go ahead and just highlight that in your resume, in your work experience. I think that will really stands out, right? And it gives the right context as to what you have done and why that might be of value to that specific job position. Okay, I hope that makes some sense. And I'm not sure, maybe you can clarify this for me. I'm not sure if what you do right now is not already SDET. I know they'll kind of ask that kind of question a little bit, but when I look at this, it seems like you just want to keep doing what you're doing. You're not really trying to, right? So am I saying this right? That what you do right now is already an SDET role and you're just looking to do more SDET roles? Can I say it like that?
Yeah, so I guess there's a little bit of, inconsistency in the way that the roles are applied over the industry. But I, like I said at the beginning, I wanted to go more into focusing on the coding, and from my understanding, that's what an SDET role is. I do other things within my role, but yeah.
So you want to be relieved on more of the sort of the coordination and the lead role type, and just more focusing on the coding and the continuous testing.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. On the BDD side, and this is maybe a pet peeve, I'm not sure. Maybe someone in the audience can speak up to this. There's a key proponent of BDD, right? And that is that you have these spec file that you write that is business friendly, right? And so this applies to many things. If I ask you, why are you guys using BDD? What is the proponent of BDD? I need to hear something like that, like, oh yeah, we're using this because this is understandable, right? A business friendly kind of structure, so that possibly other people who are not technical can look at, right, my spec file and know what I'm writing on, right? Which then there might be more follow-up questions from that. So I would say kind of go through each of these things that you do and think about the why behind these tool choices. It may not be of your choice, I get that, but the question will invariably come out, right? Well, why do you guys use that? Why use, for example, why use WebDriver IO and not using, say, Cypress? Someone might ask that question, right? Why choose Sauce Lab over, say, Browser Stack? I don't know, that may or may not come up. Something like that, so you can kind of speak to the good and the bad, right, on each of these different technology things. Same thing with GitHub Action. Well, that's great. What if I just use a Jenkins? Can I not do the same thing? What is the pros and cons, right? So, and some of these things can get very technical, and which is good. If you want to do SDET, those are the questions that they will ask. At least I will ask, right? I will make sure that you understand the why. It may not be your choice. Again, we get that, but you understand why this is a good choice and why you want to support it, having that choice. Okay, so I have come across instances of company actually abandoning BDD altogether, right? And they also have their reasons why. And so they may be that kind of questions as, yeah, we're using BDD because so and so say that, but we're thinking of switching to something else, and here are the reasons why. And we talk about kind of the problem with BDD, or sort of the negative impact of BDD, right? So whatever you can talk about real life experience, but you can go technical, and you really want to get into the whys. So it really speaks to kind of a maturity in your experience. You're not just doing it, you actually know why you're doing it, and you're following those whys to get the best benefit out of the technology choices. Okay. So, okay, I hope that's helpful at all. Yeah.
I appreciate it very much. You guys have given me so much feedback, and I'm definitely going to watch the video on YouTube myself later, because I've been trying to take notes, and I should have come with a bigger notepad to be prepared to take those notes. But I really appreciate it. It's very thorough, and it will give me a lot of, I didn't know how to improve my resume, and there's a lot of feedback there that I can see. And you've given me the reasons why, and the mindset of the recruiter or the interviewer, so that helps me a lot. Thanks.
One last thing I would say is that my question, one of my last question about the review, PR review, right? If you're doing PR review, and so not you, but if anyone is doing a PR review and just go, yeah, I'll just accept that because that's my teammate. That's the guy sitting next to me. I don't want to look bad, right? You're doing that. You're not doing PR review. You're just following the pipeline just to move things along, right? Yep. So assuming you're not that person, then there must be a reason why you do a PR review, and there should possibly be a reason as to why you would reject a PR, right? So again, things with that, I'm sure you have a list, or some sort, but write that down, kind of crystallize it a little bit, why this is good, why this is bad, right? And that speaks to maturity, and it also gives the hiring manager, you know, like, oh, this person is not just a doer, right? He actually could help me with quality control on the quality group, right? That's a very kind of precious skill. It's very hard to find people that watches the watchdogs, you know. So if you can be that person, that just really up on your value. So I would say anything that helps a team to be better, if you have those skills, mentorships, reviews, you know, anything like that, go ahead and write down the top, you know, 5 or 6 things that you look for and that you're good at, and speak to that, you know, confidently, and I think you'll do great. Yeah.
I appreciate that so much. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Candidate number 2. Wish you good luck. And by the way, check our Slack channel. I just posted that we are actually looking for SDET, and you may want to check it out and just connect with us. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for participating. Mike, Adeel, tremendous job. Narina, thank you for helping organizing. All candidates, number 1 and candidate number 2. We are kudos for you, like, for bravery that you're participating in this session. It requires a lot of stamina, I would say. Yeah, I think that would be it. Also, I mentioned that some people are asking if they can post their openings. Yes, please, guys, post your openings if you're hiring as well in our Slack channel. We are sharing their openings there, and you can get people get connected with you. If you guys have any other questions, also please post it in our Slack channel. But we are looking for our next market review session, which will be in the next month, in February. I'll keep you posting in our Slack channel. And check our YouTube channel. As I mentioned, we have 23 already market reviews we went through. So all of them, they are unique and helpful. All right, guys, if anything else.
No, this was great. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Narina. Obviously, Mike, Evgeny, great. It was awesome. And thank you to candidates. It was great.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Thank you too.
Thank you, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.